Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming out. Buenas tardes a todos. Gracias por llegar aquí esta tarde. Pues today we have two great special friends of the North Shore Latino Business Association. Our friend, Congressman John Tierney, and we have the great honor to have Thomas Perez, the U.S. Secretary of Labor. I briefly want to mention a couple of information. Secretary Perez is the nation's 26th Secretary of Labor. He has committed to making it good on the promised opportunity for all, giving every working family a chance to get ahead and put in a middle-class life within reach of everyone willing to work for it. To accomplish this, Perez priorities of the department includes ensuring a fair day's pay and a fair day's work, connecting ready-to-work Americas and ready-to-be-filled jobs through skills programs like registered apprenticeships and on-the-job training, promoting gender equality in the workforce, ensuring that people with disability and veterans has access to equal employment opportunity, and insisting on a safe and level playing field for all American workers. As you can see, Secretary Perez and Congressman John Tierney share a similar passion to supporting and building on issues and programs that ensure that if you work hard and play by the rules, you can still have a shot at the American dream. We look forward to hearing from Congressman John Tierney and Secretary Perez, but they also want to hear from you, so please don't be shy. No, nada de vergüenza para cualquier pregunta que tengan. With that, I would like to introduce Congressman John Tierney.
Thank you. Thank you, Francis. We're guaranteed that this microphone is going to cause trouble at some point today. It's sort of glued down in the back here, so the Secretary and I have both been warned to not try to wander too far. Look, thanks, everybody. This, Mr. Secretary, is a lot more formal acting than we generally are. Everybody here pretty much knows everybody, and we're just behaving for the day. On that
Sorry
basis.
to hear that.
We can change that dynamic anytime everybody wants. Francis, thank you. We're just thrilled to be able to be here, and we put this together on short notice and really put Francis in a bind, but she responded as she always does, and does so much for the community on that, as does the whole association. So we want to thank you for the contributions of the community and for what you personally have done in terms of putting this together. She has a day job as well as working at the association, and I think about 80, 100 hours a week by the end of the day on that. So we appreciate what you're doing. Thank you, everybody, for coming here and sharing some time with the Secretary. He's terrific to be in the area, be willing to come by and talk to us, particularly auspicious time because we've just, as you know, saw each other at the White House about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, when the President was signing into law the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. What you have to know, Mr. Secretary, is a number of people in this room were instrumental in putting a lot of those provisions in that act, because we had great input from all the stakeholders and a little bit of personal North Shore pride, particularly from the North Shore Workforce Investment Board and individuals supporting on that, but also the other workforce investment boards up in Merrimack Valley with Joe Bevilacqua and others. And so it was a really collaborative effort that not only was rooted here, but went right across the country. Everybody from migrant workers to the unions, to business and industry, putting provisions in there and looking at the drafts and redrafting, helping us get to the idea that you and I both support and champion all the time is let's find a job that is available and make sure we can find a person that needs a job that can have the credentials to take that job and then get paid. And there's a lot in this bill that's going to allow that to happen and work on it. I thought I was going to, you folks can tell me whether I should go down this entire list of people that are here that should be recognized, or whether we should just assume that everybody here knows they're recognized. Does that sound like a better idea? All right, I'm going to break that rule just for our State Senator Tom McGee, who's over here and does so much work. We have City Councilors Brendan Crichton, Maria Carrasco, and Buzzy Barton as well. And Representative Ehrlich's office is Legislative Aide Joe Gravelise is also here with us from her office on that. But, now I've started this, I'm going on here. We've got, let's hold our applause for a second, I'll do it quickly. Leslie Gould from the Lynn Area Chamber of Commerce, Ted Grant from the Lynn Business Partnership, Joe Bevilacqua from the Merrimack Valley Chamber, Bob Bradford from the North Shore Chamber, Bill Tinty from Grover and Frey, and Gary Barr from the North Shore Alliance for Economic Development, President Patricia Gentili from the North Shore Community College, Diane Paltergill, the Dean of North Shore Community College, Mary Churchill from the Salem State University Provost, Judy Burke from Middlesex Community College, and a host of people, I'm not going to name you all, from the North Shore Workforce Investment Board, the Lowell Workforce Investment Board, and their career place, as well as joining Joe on that, all of whom participated in that, none more so than Mary Saris, who's the chair of our North Shore Workforce Investment Board, and Bill Tinty, who simultaneously held the position of the National Workforce Investment Board Chair, the State Workforce Investment Chair, and the North Shore Workforce Investment Chair, and pretty much did a great deal of work on this. Thank you. We're at a time in our country where people are really starting to debate essential matters, like whether or not people are going to get paid for how hard they work, whether we make sure that work pays, so people can support and sustain their families. We're talking about equal pay for equal work, and that's important to families, not just women. But as I always say, the bills come in and they don't break them down between one spouse or the other. They come down for the family. And so everybody wants people that are working to get paid their value and for the time that they're working and the effort they're putting in on that. We're talking about ways to try to help people be able to make sure their children get really good early learning experiences. We're one of only 3 industrialized nations in the world that don't find a way to partner with our states and others to get a good early learning opportunity so that people can go off to work, so that they don't have to take a day off without pay because their child is sick or they're sick. So all of these things are starting to resonate with people who realize that in the last couple of decades, people haven't been seeing their income go up, and they haven't had the kind of stability they need on the job. And sometimes, greatly, as technology gets involved and jobs get offshored, and sometimes new innovative types of work come into place, they haven't had the skills or the education that are really necessary to be able to take a job that does exist. That's why it's important that we have a secretary who understands that. I have to tell you, when we all learned on the Education and Workforce Committee, you know that I've been on that committee now since I've been in Congress, because I think it deals with the bread and butter issues, all the things I just mentioned about the work experience, about your pension when you do retire, about health care. All of that's important, but we all know who works hard for those things and has a history and a career of it. When we were told that Secretary Perez was being nominated and then he was going to get the job, it was sort of like a big, fist bump. We thought it was a great idea. He has a history and a career where he's worked on these issues. He was the head of the Department of Labor in the state of Maryland. He's been a law professor in this area in 2 different universities. He's been working in the Department of Justice as Assistant Attorney General on issues that are related to that, civil rights issues. And now he's taken the forefront nationally at a time when it's just right to have a champion for regular people who work hard. When I was the president of the Chamber of Commerce in Salem, I always said I could never see the distinction between somebody who was with organized labor or an employer at a company, particularly a small company, and an owner of a small business, small company. Our kids all play in the same leagues. They all go to the same schools. We're all living in the same neighborhoods. And frankly, we're all making about the same amount of money. Just because you own a small business, everybody here that owns one can tell you it doesn't mean you're making a fortune. You're working hard, putting in long hours and doing it, and your partner's really with the people that work with you and for you on that basis. And if they don't do well, you don't do well. And so we needed a champion in the Department of Labor that understood that and would work both for small businesses and would work for people that are working in small businesses and understand that labor is a friend, not an enemy. We have that in Secretary Thomas Perez, and I'm honored and thrilled that he could join us here today. I want to introduce him for a couple of remarks, and we're going to open it up for questions and answers. Secretary Perez.
Congressman, thank you for those kind words. And when you become Labor Secretary, the first thing you do, or one of the first things you do, is you look at your committees that you spend a lot of time in front of, and you ask yourselves, who are your friends? Who knows your issues? Who are your go-to people during challenging times? And we have a lot of challenging times right now because we have, frankly, a polarized Congress. And when I was looking down that list, I stopped right there on education and workforce. We spend a lot of time there. We have a lot of repeat business there. We need leaders. You know, we have leaders there who know our issues. And I want to say thank you for the work you have done on this committee, because the thing you don't hear very often these days is a bipartisan bill passed the Congress. And overlooked in what the congressman just said was, this is a big deal, what just happened. And so, you know, his leadership and the leadership of others on the committee who were able to find common ground was so critically important. And you know, this is all about who we are as a community. And this is about building a vibrant middle class. This is about getting rid of yesterday's battles. You know, it's not the Hatfields and the McCoys. People like to create false choices out there. You're either for business or you're for labor. I'm for business and I'm for labor, because we're all in this together. That's why I spend a lot of time talking to business owners. I used to serve in a local government. I was an elected official. And so I have great appreciation for the work that y'all do, because you can't print money. You know, you got to balance your budget. And you know, the rubber hits the road here at local government. And I love being here in Lynn, because you know what Lynn is about is America, the diversity of America, not simply the racial and ethnic diversity, but the socio-economic diversity. And I want to say thank you and felicidades. Hay dominicanos en la casa aquí. Poquito dominicanos aquí. Yo soy dominicano también. Nací aquí en los Estados Unidos, pero mis padres son dominicanos. Nacieron en Santo Domingo y La Vega. Y yo nací en Buffalo porque hace, you know, muy similar que la República Dominicana. My parents settled in Buffalo because the weather was very similar to the Dominican Republic. And so that's why we ended up there. But actually, you know, the story of my parents, Congressman, is the story of America. You know, my maternal grandfather was actually the ambassador from DR to the U.S. until he spoke out against Trujillo after the massacre of the Haitians in the 30s. And he was declared non grata. And my father was involved in the student movement, and he had to leave. And they came to America. And my father got drafted as a legal immigrant and served with distinction in the U.S. Army, and then worked at the VA hospital from the mid-50s until his death in 1974 when I was 12. And that's the story of my family, but that's the story of America. That's the story of Lynn, Massachusetts. When I just drove up here, I saw an Iraqi storefront with wording in Arabic. I saw many Latino storefronts. We passed a Greek restaurant. And the list goes on. And that was just in my trip up. And that's why I love this community, because you really do embody America with all its hopes, dreams, aspirations, and challenges. And that's why I like working with Congressman Tierney, because, you know, he gets it. And we have been able to work on a lot of really important things together. And it starts with job creation. And every first Friday of the month, we announced the job numbers. And last Friday was the first Friday of the month. And let me tell you a little something about what's happening in America, because there are a lot of good things happening in America. 209,000 new jobs created last month. It was the 6th month in a row of job growth north of 200,000. That hasn't happened since 1997. 53 months in a row of private sector job growth. 53 months. That has never happened since we've been keeping records. And we've been keeping records since 1940 or so. That's 10 million jobs roughly. And again, just for context, in the 6 months before President Obama took office, 2.9 million jobs were lost, including 1.5 million jobs lost in the 2 months prior to the president taking office. You look at the unemployment rate a year ago, 7.5%. You look at the unemployment rate now, 6.2%. That's the biggest one-year drop in 30 years. You look at other things that you may not know about. You know, the Latino dropout rate over the last 10 years in the United States has been cut in half. More Latinos are going to college than ever before. Over 40% in 2009. were entering college. And if I know there's some community college folks in this room. I think community colleges are the secret sauce of success in America. They're the gateway to opportunity for so many first-generation Americans. They're the gateway to opportunity for businesses because they're so deft. You know, I have a demand need for, like in Maryland on the Eastern Shore, there's a big need for people with a commercial driver's license. So the community college steps up, creates a 6-month certificate program. 6 months later, people are punching their ticket to the middle class. And that's the essence of partnership. And I want to say thank you to all of you who serve on the Workforce Investment Board. I've had conversations with your congressman who sings your praises with regularity because he knows that you understand what's going on. You know, the old model of workforce training was what I call the train and pray model. You know, we used to train people and then pray that there were jobs out there for those people when they were done. Now, I don't want anyone leaving here thinking that I don't like to pray. My late mother would be very angry with me if she thought that I left that impression. But I don't think that's a good model for job creation. Everything we do has to be demand-driven. We need to understand what every business owner in Lynn is thinking, whether it's the big ones like GE or whether it's the small businesses. We need to understand, and that's why your work is so critically important and your leadership is so critically important. And having that knowledge enables us to move forward. And one of the things that, you know, Congressman Tierney worked hard for in the Workforce Investment Act reauthorization is to make sure that we embodied that philosophy into that law. So it talks about fancy words like sector strategies and things like that. But what that means is we need to know what's happening, and we should be funding projects. We're not going to train any widget makers if no one's hiring them, because we're not doing any favors to the people getting trained. We're not doing any favors to the businesses, and we're certainly not doing any favors to the taxpayer. And so that's a big thing. Another thing that your congressman fought very hard for in this bill is to make sure, and this is a fundamental principle of workforce development, that we meet each job seeker where we find him or her. And what do I mean by that? Some people walk through the door of an American Job Center and they might have a college degree and they're ready to go. All they need is dust off their resume, give them a few job leads, they're off and running. Some people walk through an American Job Center and they may be limited English proficient, like my father. You know, my father spoke what I used to call Ricky Ricardo English. You know, when he took his licensing exams, my mother, who spoke very good English, she was his tutor. She was, you know, we used to kid him when I was a kid, you know, because he would say, Tom, came here. You know, his syntax were terrible. I speak Ricky Ricardo Spanish, so I don't mind because I mimic my father. But some people come through an American Job Center and they may have language needs. They may be 18 years old and they left high school. And by the way, let me give you one announcement that literally is hot off the presses. We have this program called Youth Build. Youth Build is a great program. It provides opportunity because I believe every kid, every young person is gifted and talented. And it is up to all of us, Congressman Tierney, myself, everyone in this community, to draw out those gifts and talents. And one program that does just that, and that Congressman Tierney has fought hard to keep the funding on in a world where, you know, people think we can eat cake and lose weight. You know, cut the transportation budget and magically fairy dust will appear and all our roads will be repaired. That's not how it happens. But Youth Build is a program we've been able to retain. And today, you know, we announced some grants and $73 million in grants to be precise. And there is one person in this room who just found out about this because they got a $1.1 million grant. And that is Mickey. Can you stand for a moment here? Because Mickey Northcutt of the North Shore Community Development Corporation. And Mickey knows this because he put this together, but I want to make sure y'all know this. This is a competitive grant process. This isn't just, I want the money and we give it to them. The demand far exceeds our supply. And I know if Mickey were up here right now, what he would say is, I'm very grateful, but this is a team effort. and he's had a lot of folks helping him. So again, this is literally an announcement that was made a couple hours ago, and I wanted to make sure that everybody knows that is worth a fist bump, sir. Because, that's what it's about. We all know folks who, the long and winding road, they may gotten off the rails. And, my folks taught me that if you want to get to heaven, you better have letters of reference from poor people. And, that's kind of the ethic that I've tried to bring to this job. And that's the ethic of Lynn. We believe in second chances in Lynn. We believe in partnership here. And I just look at this room, and, I go to a lot of meetings, and sometimes it's just a meeting of one sector of the community, and then you go to the next meeting, and it's the meeting of the other sector of the community. The fact that we have everybody here, Congressman, is probably the thing I will remember most, and it embodies the spirit of community that really is what you are all about. And that's why, Francis, I really take my hat off to a fellow Dominicana and the work that you have done. And you have a day job as well. And so I want to really come here to say that this is a vibrant community, and we need you to continue the work that you're doing, because we're really having a conversation in America about what it means to be in the middle class. That's really what it's about. We're fighting hard to raise the minimum wage because, nobody who works a full-time job should have to live in poverty. And I appreciate your advocacy, Congressman, on behalf of the minimum wage. We're fighting really hard to increase opportunities for people to get access to apprenticeship programs because, as the Congressman has said in committee and elsewhere, apprenticeship programs are a ticket to the middle class. For every dollar of federal money spent on apprenticeship, the return is $27. That's 27 to 1. That's a pretty darn good return on investment. And you know what? Everywhere I go across the nation, I hear from business owners that I need more apprentices. That's why we're investing $100 million. There's going to be another $100 million out there in competitive money this fall for partnerships. And that's why you won your grant, because you're a partnership. You're not in it alone. It's a posse, and you've got a good posse working with you, Mickey, and others. And so we're doing that because we want to grow the middle class, and we want to meet demands and the demand needs of employers. And by the way, I was in Baltimore talking about this yesterday, and there was one person who happened to be in the room when I was in Baltimore, Congressman, and it happened to be Senator McGee, of all people. He's stalking me, Senator. He's stalking. And it was great to see him, and it was great to see you here again today, Senator. And so, that partnership is what it's all about. And I want to shut up and listen because I want to hear from you about what we can do better as a federal government, where you think we're doing well and where you think we're falling short. I want to hear about the challenges that are specific to this area. And I really look forward to walking away with a real granular sense of what we can do to help, because that's what we're all about. And I love my job because every day, we try to expand opportunity. That's what I refer to the Department of Labor as the Department of Opportunity, because that's really what we're about. When we enforce minimum wage laws, we're expanding opportunity for people to get the wages they deserve. When we help with these grants, we're expanding opportunity for kids who may fall off the rails. When we do everything, that's what it's all about. And a lot of our work gets done in committee. So I leave where I started. Thank you. I don't, frankly, know how he puts up with it some days because, sometimes the debate is devoid of facts. I grew up as a trial lawyer, and I was trained that if you say things that are factually inaccurate, there will be consequences with the judge. And so I strive in everything I say and do to be accurate. And I should just stop because
I'll
my
bail you out on that
inside voice, that's not always the case. So I want to say thank you, Congressman,
Thank you.
for your adherence to accuracy in the debates that we have.
A couple of lawyers over
in
here to tell you
Congress.
they understand exactly stop when you're ahead, and they're going to do that. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you very much. You see how important it is to have a secretary with passion, somebody that's just not filling up the title. and sitting behind the desk, but to actually have the passion to come out into our communities and share thoughts with us and take our thoughts back and do something with them. You talked about the ability of business and labor to get along. Have you met Felix? He was there a minute ago. Where'd he go? There he is. Felix, who's married to Francis. Right. So the president of AFSCME and the head of the North Shore Latino Business Association. I can work all the time on that. So whatever comments people have, whatever questions you may have, now's the time. All right. You know, people, we just stand up, Diana, and just tell us who you are and then ask your question. That'd be great.
I'm Nancy Stager from Eastern Bank, and I'm just delighted that you're here in Lynn, because as you said, this is a real town. So we're delighted to welcome you. My question relates to WIOA, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. I'd like to know what you think, what you have as dreams for that. That's a really big law. It's long, it's big,
Right.
and it represents a change from the past in a way that we can build on. But I'd really like to know from you what you see what would you like to really see happen as a result of that new law?
I think let me give some context. The Workforce Investment Act was last reauthorized in 1998. Here we are in 2014. So stop and close your eyes and think about, what did the economy look like in 1998, and what does the economy look like today? What is our knowledge base of best practices in 1998, and what is our knowledge base today? And I think the short answer is we've learned so much in the ensuing 16 years. We have so... I get to go around the country, and there's a tree falling in the woods problem, which is to say that I see so many promising practices occurring, often led by workforce investment boards and community colleges and nonprofits working together. And what I hope for WIOA is that this is going to give us a meal ticket to take best practices to scale, to enshrine the values that are common in those, and those values include a commitment to a demand-driven approach, sector strategies, a commitment to rewarding innovation. And so when I was in state government, we would get this 15% set-aside money that was an innovation fund. And then that got cut. Now it's back in. And we did a lot of innovation. Let me give you an example of innovation we did in state and local government. We have a lot of foreign-born, foreign-trained health professionals living in Maryland, and I used to be the chair of the board of the largest immigrant-serving nonprofit. And I met and I would talk to a lot of them who were sweeping floors for minimum wage, doing noble work, but they wanted to be a nurse again. And meanwhile, our hospitals were going to South Africa and the Philippines to recruit, H-1B nurses and others, and we said, we got folk right here. So with and by the way, these were all folks who had immigration status. And so with a nominal investment of some of our innovation fund, we have those folks working in emergency rooms. It's a win for them because they're making more money. It's a win for the tax collector because we're collecting more money. It's a win for the community. And that's an example of what this bill can do. The promise of this bill is rewarding innovation, making sure that we have more accountability, because one of the concerns I think that was expressed in the committee by some was that we can't demonstrate the return on investment. I think we can do that, and I think we have more tools as a result of this bill to do that. So I think, again, rewarding innovation, enshrining the values we've learned over the last 15 years into law, and giving states and local boards flexibility, because what works in Lynn may not work in Montgomery County. And so I think you have more flexibility to do that.
Good question, Nancy. Thank you. And Tony Dunn, he runs a program called the E-Team out of Lynn, deals with GE. Maybe, Tony, you might tell us a little bit about that. That was some innovation or whatever. And I just want to, all right. See, oh, Steve, I'm looking at you thinking, too. My mistake. You do share a face, but you keep it clean shaven. You know something? You're right. I never have.
Yeah.
There's something to be said for that. But the idea of the E-Team was a great model on that, where the GE had a need for new people coming in. North Shore Community College played a terrific role on that, and the labor union played a role as well, and really filled the need on that. So part of that innovation ability is in the law as well. Joe Bevilacqua.
Yes, sir. Mr. Secretary, welcome.
Thank you, Ben.
I cross both business and workforce development. I'm president of the Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce, but I also have the good fortune of being the chairman of the Merrimack Valley Local Workforce Investment Board. I co-chair with the governor of the state of Massachusetts Workforce Investment Board, and I'm the national chair of the National Association of State Workforce Board Chairs. Portia Wu just spoke at our national conference in Kentucky. John Laff from the apprenticeship department just spoke as well. I think WIOA is the most important workforce board package you brought forward to us, and I want to congratulate our congressman, who's been a stalwart for the last decade trying to move legislation forward, and I want to thank you and the president and all the administration, because you've now made innovation, entrepreneurship, apprenticeship, lifelong learning possible for so many people, and I just want to say thank you, because I think now we have the tools, all the workforce investment board people that are here today now have the tools to move forward so we can put everyone back to work. I just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you. And we're putting, we have a lot of work to do under the law, and we have a very short period of time to do it, in some cases as little as 6 months. So I simply want to ask you for your help and input as we move forward. If there's something in that bill that you want to make sure we really move on, or there's something that feels ambiguous that we need to explain, please let us know, and you know, we're easy to get a hold of. Yes? We'll make sure we get to everyone, okay?
My secretary, Pat Gentili, North Shore Community College.
Oh, thank
We're
you.
in the street, so.
Great.
Want to come in before we?
Well, again, I'm a huge fan of the community college system, as I said.
Well, I want to say thank you as well for the creativity that the Obama administration and your department had in terms of the Trade Adjustment Act. And the funding that came out of that truly has had an impact here, a very positive impact here in the Commonwealth, and here in the city of Lynn as well. We're now going into the fourth and final cycle of that. And by the way, we did put in a proposal, so if you have any pull.
We have a separate team that does that for very good reason, because I get a lot of calls. But nice try.
But once this final cycle happens, what do you see the United States Department of Labor doing to continue capacity building for the community college sector? It's been a huge boom for our sector.
Well, thank you for your question. And one of the huge things that has happened in the last 4 years has been the cycle of grants. And as you correctly point out, Doctor, this is the last round of the current cycle. And you know, folks like Congressman Tierney have been pointing out. And by the way, I could take it any blue state or red state. There is unanimity in what you just said, that these grants, which have been, and community colleges have been the centerpiece, have been totally transformational. And I could give you 15 or 20 stories off the top of my head, including a visit I had with the president to Los Angeles to the 8 community colleges a week ago. And so the key is to sustain it. One thing we're doing is working much harder with philanthropy. And so philanthropy hosted a conference, and I don't know if you guys went, down in Florida. I apologize, I have too many gadgets. This is one of the philanthropies right now telling me that they want to continue to host it. And the reason was we want to bring community colleges together to share the learning moments, because I would go to 10 different places and I'd hear the same thing, and I'm like, we got to figure out a way to connect the dots and have them do that shared learning so that the lessons you learn can be exported elsewhere and the lessons elsewhere can be imported here when appropriate. And so that's what we're trying to do. Another thing that's happening are, you know, people in Congress, you know, such as, but not limited to, Congressman Tierney, are saying, you know, we can't have this investment. I don't call it a program, it's an investment. We can't have this investment end. The momentum is just beginning. And the target market of this program are people who want to either climb the ladder to the middle class, or were in the middle class and fell out during the Great Recession and are trying to climb back up. I mean, that's why we in this room all get up in the morning, because we want to help with that. So, you know, as you're moving forward, I hope you will certainly let folks know that there needs to be son and daughter and grandson and granddaughter of this remarkable investment, because I don't want it to end. I want to continue it.
Call you Congressman. It's already done again.
I'm a labor representative on the WIP and proud to participate in that effort. We make a lot of progress. I'm amazed how many times people from both sides of the aisle agree with each other in that context. The Workforce Investment Board is time well spent. My day job, I'm a union organizer, also known as a troublemaker. So I'm going to point something out and perhaps suggest a solution. I know the political reality is you have to do a lot of things by executive order. The UBC, the Carpenters Union, most of our hours are in drywall, and the Latino workforce is the heart and soul of the drywall, union and not. Many non-union workers have their wages stolen on a regular basis, and it's really glaring when it happens on federal work. HUD projects, veterans housing, because there's a quirk in the public records law which allow anonymity for the contractors who hire carpenters, and they're able to redact their names and addresses. That leads to my organization not being able to prosecute, investigate, and check out contractors who are stealing wages and winning bids unfairly. Massachusetts is a great place. Our minimum wage in construction is $42 an hour. And that is a workforce issue for Latinos, and we embrace them, we organize them, we reach out to them, and we represent them even when they're not in the union. So we've done wage recovery. And it's really hard to do when you can't find out the names and addresses of the workers, because they've been redacted for, they don't want to invade their privacy. I've never seen anyone pay too much, because I don't have to get in touch with them. So, Mr. Secretary, if you could just perhaps encourage the enforcement apparatus in your department to pay attention to small wage cases, because they are emblematic of a much larger fraud going on. Lots of contractors steal wages as part of their business plan, and they can't be caught under the present system in federal work. And again, I love your enthusiasm, and I hope you realize that a path to growth, including with youth growth, involves the United Brotherhood of Carpenters. I'm really proud of the way we do our business coast to coast and the way we spend our money.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your leadership. Before this meeting, I had a meeting with the mayor and some of the building trades, so I very much appreciate it. Yeah, Mayor Walsh, I'm sorry. I apologize. There are many mayors in Massachusetts, and
He's our guy. He's a laborer.
yeah. Well, and the reason I refer to him as the mayor is for many of my friends in the union movement here, he is the mayor because he came out of the movement. And a couple of really quick things, because I want to make sure I get to every question. Afterward, I'd really like to get your contact information, because a big part of our enforcement work relies on eyes and ears, private attorneys general across the country. We get so many of our cases as a result of leads. And by the way, I get as many leads from businesses as I do from labor unions and individuals, because I hear from businesses all the time. I'm competing on a contract. I pay unemployment insurance, I pay my workers' comp, I don't misclassify my workers, and I can't get the contract because the other guy's paying people under the table. You know, the fancy word we call for that is misclassification. When I was in Maryland, we passed a bill and I rebranded it. I called it what it was, workplace fraud. It's cheating. That's what my parents taught me. That's cheating. And that's unfair to the business owner. It's unfair to the worker. It's unfair to the tax collector. And so that's why I want to learn a little bit more. Secondly, and very briefly, the president the other day announced another executive order. We call it level road contracting. And the government purchases literally hundreds of billions of dollars of goods and services every year. And we want to make sure that we reward responsible contractors, and that entities that cheat and are involved in egregious violations can't bid on contracts. So DOL is in the middle of the implementation of that. There were a number of members of Congress and others, and I want to thank them for their leadership in shining a light on this issue. So make sure we get your information afterward. And if there are other violations around here, you know, we want to hear about them, because we don't know what we don't know. That's how I do town hall meetings.
Hello.
How are you?
Mi nombre es Néstor Grullón,
gusto.
dominicano.
Mucho gusto.
I don't know one have, I mean, this is a lot of situations happening away between the Latino community in Massachusetts, and one of them that probably no one, maybe maybe might be afraid to talk about, which is salary discrimination against Latino. There's something that's happening, including myself. I mean, when I trained someone many years ago to work in the same area that I am, this person is making more money than me. So I don't know if this is something got to be about the color or about the race, but it's a reason why someone's making $10,000 than me. I'm just speaking for myself, but I believe there's a lot of reason why Latino don't bring enough money into the family. It's because they make poor salary, or it's because they don't make enough, or the salary is not really great enough. I mean, I know it's a big question in terms of discrimination against Latino in the salary situation. How come Latino don't bring enough money to the family? Or they got to have maybe 2 or 3 jobs in order to support the family. By the way, I'm a professional person that I work in a big company. It's a private company anyways. And it's a term that someone can talk about. Is maybe people are afraid to talk about this, but need to be talked about. I don't know if it's something that the government might have something anyway, some kind of regulation against those private sectors out there that, what can they do to do some regulations about the salary against other minorities out there?
Well, thank you for your question. We just celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And Title VII of the Civil Rights Act stands for the simple proposition that in the workplace you should be judged by the quality of your work and no other factor. And I had the privilege of enforcing that law in my last job. When I used to enforce it in the early 90s, my boss at the time was a guy you might know. His name is Deval Patrick. So he knows a little bit something about this as well. There is the Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination, which is a very important state agency involved in these efforts. There's the Department of Justice, and there's the EEOC. And all of us have a very important role to make sure we root out discrimination. But again, we don't know what we don't know. And we rely very much on the eyes and ears. And we have a lot of conversations proactively with business leaders. I spoke this morning in D.C. at the largest conference of federal contractors. So, Fortune 100 representatives and small businesses. 22% of the workforce are federal contractors. We had this precise conversation at 8:30 a.m. this morning. And so I said the same thing to them about prevention. And I'll say to you now, we don't know what we don't know. So if you feel that there is a challenge, I certainly urge you to let people know, whether it's your congressman, and they forward stuff to us all the time. I have a constituent with this problem. It may be they lost a job, or it may be that they're a victim of discrimination. We can't help people if we don't know about the situation.
I'm Chris Brennan, the Executive Director of the Career Placement Movement. It's one of the American Job Centers, and we have had great support from Congressman Tierney. We're run by a community college. So I first want to compliment the administrative structure, Holly O'Brien, the Region 1 Administrator. You can pass legislation, but you have to administratively carry it out, and Holly has done a great job. She comes to our meetings, just doesn't sit there in Boston and push things around. She comes to our meetings. The key item for me is the funding. So we were cut by sequestration in the funding 2 years ago. Our center served over 12,000 people last year, 10,500 people this year, but I had to cut staff. I've lost 15% of my staff that are the frontline people that are serving clients because we had the loss in money through the sequestration. We had a little bit of a bump up this last year. Number 2, intellectually I'm for the 15% set aside, but locally I can't be for that because that's money that doesn't come locally through the allocations to us. And so we have to see some way that the dollars can be increased so we can serve more people with the staffing that we have. So the legislation is good. I'm all for WEOR. I think it's great. I applaud you. But the appropriations have to be strong enough. And so it's a message to both the Congressman and to you to try to boost those appropriations somehow.
Yeah, let me take this one off the Secretary's plate because he could write the check, he'd write it on that. He's been a great advocate for it, comes before the committee on a regular basis, shares with us, what the needs are on that. But the Appropriations Committee obviously is much divided. Congress is divided on the issue of spending. I think the example the Secretary used earlier about people think that you're going to pave your roads and manna from heaven is going to come down and pay for it on that. And you even saw in the paper today, probably the poll that had been taken, that the American public is divided about things like how they're going to pay for necessities like fixing the roads and bridges, what's the way to do that. We had a problem where they were cutting back. This is a problem that's going on for a while. You and I have talked about it. That there's certain people in Congress want to keep shaving back, and we keep trying to add it back, even times trying to get back from years, unspent money from years before that may have been unspent, but it was absolutely obligated, and trying to take that money away. And we fought that fight, I can remember, on that. So we need to go in there and make the case on that. One of the good things about the authorization bill is that the bill that Virginia Fox, who was the chair of the committee, a Republican from Virginia, was North Carolina, was advocating, was cutting the amount that could be authorized, so that you wouldn't even be able to appropriate or spend it on that basis. In the final authorization, we got all those numbers back up. All right, and we did sort of push back on some of that sequestration last time, and we put that money back in, which I think was critical. So that's why you get the bump up, is we're able to do on that. So the fight goes on. We have to make our case. We have to ask people to make their case across the country to all their associations and friends, so that they speak to their members of Congress and get them online. These things don't happen for free. And if you're going to get people ready to work, and if your companies are going to have a good workforce, then somebody has to be paying for that. So we've had small victories of late, and we have the room now in the authorization vehicle to have an appropriation that's more robust, and we'll be fighting for that and working beside people to do it.
And the help we need from you is, and I've said this a number of times to business groups, to WIBs and others, we need to build a movement around this, because the success you're experiencing here is being replicated in every state in the union. And so we need to connect the dots in every state, because members of Congress do respond to their constituents. And the thing about this conversation we're having that I love is it shouldn't be a red or a blue issue. This is really red, white, and blue. And so, you know, I need your help with other community colleges. I need your help with other WIBs. We need your help, you know, with other businesses and elected officials, because done right, you know, I've done this in local government, I've done it in state government. It's never been partisan. It shouldn't be partisan, because it's about investments that have a very demonstrated return.
So that, go ahead.
It's also, Massachusetts was doing better, quote unquote. Now, to me, 6% unemployment's not better than what it should be back to the 4%, 5% days. So money went to Rhode Island or Michigan or California. I understand that, but it's a zero-sum game. So I know that you're both on this page, and I appreciate it, but it's more of that message out there. So Massachusetts got less of the money because our economy was going in the right direction, but still, at that higher level of unemployment, and the other people that are part-time employed who want a full-time job, and you know all that, David.
We get it. And we'll work on that. But there are two people in the front row here, Bill Tierney and Joe Bevilacqua, who can help on a national level as well. They have the connections, and they do the work, so they can spread the word and get that also moving. You know, talk about bipartisanship on this. This issue should be bipartisan. Unfortunately, there was a period of time in the House as we were fighting for this bill. One version, and the Virginia Fox I mentioned before, was about consolidating every program, then cutting the amount of money that was available. And that actually was a straight party line vote. There was only one party, the Republicans, who voted for that, and none of the Democrats. The interesting thing was, after that happened, we all went to work. And we tried to work on a bipartisan basis with the Senate and with the House, and we went around and around for months. The final bill that we got that came out, 95% of the Senate and over 95% of the House voted for it. So it is a bipartisan issue when you can put the right measure on the floor for people to vote for. More questions or comments?
Tomás, my name is Pedro Díaz Hernández. I represent the Hispanic TV show Cosmos Internacional. Voy a romper protocolo para hablar en español, porque me dicen, yo un gran amigo que también llevamos en alto y tendrá que ser.
He's saying nice things about it. He's smiling. Yeah. But he wasn't calling you names.
¿Qué esfuerzo está haciendo la administración del presidente Obama en este preciso instante para poder llevar a cabo a que paguen las corporaciones, las altas corporaciones que no cumplen con el sistema fiscal? Y la otra pregunta es, ¿qué esfuerzo hace su administración para incrementar, o sea, qué otro esfuerzo para incrementar más el desempleo a nivel nacional? Gracias.
Muchísimas gracias. This question is really about, you know, what can we do to address unemployment in America? and improve the situation for everyone. And, that's the cause that I wake up for every single day. And, I've noted the progress, and I won't give you those numbers again, other than to say, we took a body blow in '08, and this nation always knows how to take a punch, and we've made progress, but we're not where we need to be. And the minimum wage is one thing we need to address. And I talked to business owners. I was in Cambridge a few months ago talking to business owners there. I was in other parts of Boston talking to business owners about this. And I hear from them most frequently. They tell me, you know what, Tom? What I need most are customers. Because when customers spend money, guess what happens? Then businesses have to make more things and hire more people. And this has been what we call a consumption-deprived recovery. I'll give you one stat. I don't like to be wonky, but the top 5% since the end of the recession, their spending has increased 17%, inflation adjusted. The other 95%, spending has increased roughly 1%. Why is that? Because they don't have money in their pocket to spend. I talk to so many people who've gotten a job, but they haven't gotten a raise in years. And they're telling me, Tom, I'm working harder and falling behind. And if you compare us with other countries, there were studies that have been showing that our middle class, we're now behind countries like Canada. And by the way, I will note that the union density in Canada is more than twice that in the United States. I will also note that, and this is what the economists are looking at, the average business elsewhere shares more of its income with its lower waged workers than the average business in the United States. Now let me point out that there are numerous exceptions to this rule. Business owners that I speak to day in and day out. And one Fortune 50 CEO said to me literally a week or two ago, we've got to look more long-term. We're way too short-term focused. I want to squeeze a little bit out of my workers so that I can get a short-term profit. And this person was telling me about this renegade shareholder that was on their board. And this is a big company who said, you know what, I'd rather be rich than right. I'd rather be rich than right. And that embodies that short-term focus on profitability that is all too frequently coming at the expense of wage fairness and that long-term thinking. But then I talk to people like the head of Costco, and I talk to other people like, the head of the Gap, and, they've made a business decision that we're going to do this, and other companies who make a business decision that I'm not only going to do that, I'm going to provide paid leave, because I know if my employee comes to work and her kid's sick, she's not focused, and I want her to focus on her priority. And there are studies that show that publicly traded companies who do that, their stock value goes up, and when you're the first company to do that, your stock value goes up even more. So it's not only a moral and ethical imperative, it's actually in your bottom line best interest. So we got a lot of different things to do. We got to invest in skills. We've got to raise the minimum wage. We got to pass immigration reform. We really got to pass immigration reform. And when we do this, that's how I think we move the ball forward. But you got to be persistent. I'm a civil rights lawyer. This guy's persistent. I'm persistent. This president's persistent. If at first you don't succeed, you keep fighting. I work for Senator Kennedy. That's what he taught me more than anything. Be persistent.
Thank you. And businesses need to get together on this too. By and large, every small business in this room understands that same notion that even if they're a corporation, they run their corporation for not just the shareholders, they run it for all the stakeholders. All right, they're worried about their suppliers, they're worried about their employees, they're worried about their customers, and they deal that way. And when it doesn't happen, you see the disruption. We can think of some examples close by happening right now where people lose an employer who they think really takes care of them, pays them fairly, treats their suppliers well, makes sure they have retirement benefits and savings, and then another group of people comes and says, no, we're going to be the shareholders, it's all going to come to us. So you can charge your customers more, the prices won't be as good, those things. So if businesses get together and decide they're going to get away from that theory that it's just all about the shareholders, so that then the CEO ties their little star to the shareholders and everybody else left behind, and get back to the notion that used to exist, that it's about the stakeholders. It's about making sure that everybody does well. Then we pay people fairly, then we raise the minimum wage, then we make sure that people work a fair schedule, so that something isn't imposed on them unrealistically, but they can work out a schedule in a reasonable way and make sure that everybody works and gets their hours in. All of those things can be done.
We have 2 people. Can we do 2? I can do 2. We'll do it real quick. Okay, I'll answer fast. We'll get 2 here. I said,
Thank you very much, Secretary, for being here with us this
My pleasure.
afternoon. My name is Alexandra Pinedos Shields. I'm the Director of Immigrant Organizing and Participatory Research at the Essex County Community Organization. And as you know, recently we had a great success in Massachusetts with a law that will raise the minimum wage. And our organization is part of a faith-based coalition that collected 1/3 of the 385,000 signatures that we collected to put it on the ballot. And so I'd love to hear about raising the minimum wage at the federal level. I know President Obama is talking about it, but I'd love to hear some more thoughts about it from you.
well, thank you for your leadership here. Thank you, Congressman, for your leadership on the minimum wage in the House and the Senate. And in the last year, since the President put the pedal to the metal on the minimum wage, 13 states in the District of Columbia have raised the minimum wage. And the President and I appeared with 4 New England governors in Connecticut about 6 months ago. All 4 of those states, including Massachusetts, have now raised the minimum wage. Seattle, other local governments doing the same thing. And we're going to keep fighting. I worked for Senator Kennedy back in '96. They said it couldn't be done. It was a presidential election year. You never get stuff done in a presidential election year. Guess what happened? Under his leadership, the minimum wage got raised. And business leaders keep raising their voices, because I work for nonprofits and I appreciate the people power of faith-based and nonprofits. I also equally appreciate the power of businesses who have come forward and said, this is part of thinking long-term. This is part of putting money in people's pockets. The minimum wage has been signed by every president since FDR except 2, Reagan and Ford. It's always been bipartisan. And so we're just going to keep fighting like heck. And the way we're going to keep fighting like heck is with your help.
And it's about getting the bill to the floor again, as I said. In 2007, 2008, we raised minimum wage, bipartisan. Right? Republicans and Democrats voted for it because the measure was brought to the floor, and when it was brought to the floor, people had the chance to vote for it, they did. Our problem now is we've got this notion out there, we need to ask John Boehner, get it to the floor, because people in his party as well as people in the Democratic Party will vote for it if it gets there. Because I think that there's enough public pressure, the business community as well as the entire community doing that. And I remember a donut company, a local donut company, standing up in one of the chamber meetings and telling people that were complaining about raising minimum wage that they were all wet. In fact, he would never think of paying his people the minimum wage because he wanted them to be able to go home, support their families. These were his people that partnered with him in business every day. They had families to support, and he was going to make sure that they did. Now look around this room with the small businesses here. They don't pay just minimum wage either. And Joe, you know that from your organization. Mary, you know that yours. Nancy, that they're paying people better. And so we need to get the voice up that everybody should do that.
Last word.
Sure. Thank you so much. I'm Mary Saris. I'm at the North Shore Workforce Investment Board. I can't thank the Congressman enough for his persistence in getting things done. And I wanted to formally offer our help.
Oh, you're very kind.
You gotta find me. But I'm sitting here in the middle of my current chair, Nancy Stager, my former chair, Bill Tierney, our Career Center Director, Mark Whitmore, right over there in the corner. We have a lot of expertise, a lot of partners in this room, and we stand ready to help you write those regs. We're really interested in participating in that. But the challenge that we as a WIB are facing, and it fits in with Chris's question back there, is that we want to get more and more people into training. Because our data shows makes a huge difference in getting the jobs that folks need to get. They have to get into training. We're working with our education partners to develop training programs that work for adults, that help people get in and out quickly with intensive training that gets them that job. The challenge remains to continue doing that more, and also to convincing adults that they can go to training and they can succeed, and providing them with the supports they need while they're in training so they can get through to the end and get that job. So as you're putting the regs together, that sort of mindset, keeping training in the back of your head, critical service that we provide would be, I think, really important.
2 or 3 very quick points. Training under this bill also includes incumbent worker training. You know, during the Great Recession, we had a focus on folks who had lost their jobs. We heard from a lot of businesses now that we need to be more flexible. This bill, they listen, and this bill has that flexibility. Another thing that the research shows works really well is on-the-job training. I went up to New Hampshire with the Vice President to a small business that had, on-the-job training is a tool in your toolbox that enables an employer to take a flyer on a worker, and we subsidize that wage for a certain period of time, sometimes up to 70, 80%. And it has been overwhelmingly successful. I encourage you to make use of that tool. And finally, one of the principal things so that we can make the case in Congress, and the congressman can continue to make the case in Congress, he's the converter, so I'm talking about the others, is continuing to demonstrate the return on investment. Because the talking point I hear with great regularity is we're just throwing money down the toilet. And we have an evaluation officer that can demonstrate very conclusively to the contrary, but we need to do a better job of that because that is a persistent concern. And so every time we think of the word training, we want to make sure we have a robust evaluation component so that we can demonstrate that return.
Thank you.